Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Voices That Heal podcast on behalf of the Heal Collaborative. I'm your girl Jams. I'm very excited to be with you today. This is the second time in 1 month that you get a podcast from me. You're welcome. For those who are unfamiliar with me and my story, I am a stage 4 lung cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with ALK positive lung cancer back in December of 2018. So that means this year in December is going to be my 7th year battling this disease, which is, it's turned my life a 180, but I think I'm making the best of it. And I've got a circle of girlfriends around me in the lung cancer community who, really kind of help support and boost us up and everything. And my family and friends have been there for me. So I am doing great. I am blessed and I am just wonderfully happy about it. So I have no reason to complain. But I am here today because we did one half of our lung cancer risk factors episode last weekend, where we brought on lung cancer survivor Rona White. But we really got distracted talking about her journey to finding quality care in a lung cancer clinical trial because she had some existing conditions that were disqualifying her from a lot of them. So I figured that we would dedicate that episode to her because, she truly needed that time to share her journey and the things that she's been going through. And I wanted to make sure that I had my special guest today, who is Miss Jacquelyn Nixon, who's the president of CR3, which is Citizens for Radioactive Radon Reduction. I wanted to make sure I gave her an opportunity to really talk about her organization and what she does in the community for radon, because I don't think a lot of people understand just how much of a silent killer it is and how it relates to lung cancer. So I am going to bring her on so that she can introduce herself and talk about what she's doing and all of the wonderful things that CR3 does over in Pittsburgh. So good afternoon, Jacquelyn. Welcome to the show. And thank you so much for being with me today. How are you doing?
You are very welcome.
Oh, did I lose you?
Opportunity to learn.
There you go. I thought I saw you freeze for a second there, but we're all good. So yes, give us a little bit of background on where you I guess you're in Pittsburgh, but sort of how you got your start with CR3, what your connection might be to the lung cancer community, and then just a little bit about who you are as a person.
All right. Well, first of all, let's start with who I am. That's the first thing. I am Jackie Nixon again, and I am the president of Citizens for Radioactive Radon Reduction. So what we are about is actually advocating for homeowners, schools, to test for radon gas. And if the levels are high, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute, then you should fix the problem. They call it mitigate. Okay. So with a little bit about my story to start. So what it is that I ended up beginning in 2015, I was diagnosed with stage 1 and actually stage 1A. And I didn't know anything about that. I was super, super, super healthy. Never had the flu, still don't get the flu. No COVID, no nothing. Never saw doctors.
Wow.
Just doing my thing. Well, I ended up getting shingles. And so when I went into the doctor's office, then she checked it out, said, yes, you've got shingles. And so after that, she says, well, because you were 67, I was 67 at the time, and I haven't seen you in 18 months.
Wow.
Because I never got sick. So bottom line is, I never went to the doctor. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So she said to me, do you have any complaints? And I said, well, no, I don't have any complaints. I said, but I just noticed because I sing, and you could sing and you could hold a note so long. And I said, the same songs I was able to sing 6 months ago and hold that note out long, I'm not able to get to that point anymore. I said, and I keep trying, but just, I'm not able. But that's okay. I said, because that's just me sitting in front of a computer on my fat butt, and I need to exercise my diaphragm. All right. I'm the doctor. I know I'm the healthy one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she says, well, are you coughing? I said, no, I'm not coughing. So she checked my chest and she checked my gland, all the cool things. And she says, nope, you're clear. up any blood. No, I'm not doing any of that. I'm good. So at the very last minute, we were going to both blow it off. She had her hand on the door. I will never forget this. Her hand was on the door, and she was going to walk out. And I was playing with my phone, looking at my messages. And she says, "Well, why don't we get a chest X-ray? Because you get something for free anyway, right?" So I went and got the chest X-ray, and 3 days later, they found something. I got the call.
Wow.
The tumor was approximately an inch in diameter. And when she called me, and told me about it, I immediately started to shake. I'm a strong woman. I don't cry. And I always tell people I don't cry because I look ugly when I do. But, I shaking internally. And then someone else told me later that's the equivalent of PT. Told they have cancer, they have to be sedated. So I was just on the phone listening to her and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. That was just what's going through my head.
Mm-hmm.
We had a 20-minute phone call, and she told me what has to happen. But at the end, I'll never forget this because it leads to now. She said, I believe because of your health that you will survive this like a champ. That's what she said. So that's what got me on the journey. All right. And then I decided after that there was more to my story, but I want you to ask me any questions you want, Jamie, first before I move on.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I'm listening and I'm identifying with you. There's always that like one point in your journey where you're like, I'll never forget this part. It's always that turning point for you. For me, I remember my turning point when I realized something was wrong was being on the treadmill. Like my standard, I used to just I was one of those people that would go to the gym and just do like random stuff because I had a good metabolism and I was not really, dealing with anything. But I would go to the gym, and one of the things I would do is I'd just get on the treadmill and like run a mile. And then I would get off and do some random weights and things like that. And then I'd go home and be like, I did my thing. But I remember one day I was on the treadmill, with my husband, and I was right next to him, and I'm running like I normally do, doing what I normally do on a regular basis. And I got to a quarter mile and I couldn't breathe. And I was like, and I had already had like, I had the same kind of symptoms, although not symptoms, but I had like, the shortness of breath and the coughing and the back pain and all that kind of stuff. But I never really equated it with anything or married them all together because I had thought it was just me doing kickboxing and I was just out of shape. And so I figured, back pain was from me punching and kicking. The being short of breath is because I just, I don't do high intensity cardio like that. My body's not used to it. So being on the treadmill and kind of knowing that I could go a mile and not even getting to a quarter mile before I was like, I'm not breathing. Like something's not right. When your body is like, hey, like your body's sending you all the red flags. And that for me was that turning point where I was like, I have to get a second opinion and figure out what was going on. Like, I can't keep just, there's something happening and I just need to be paying attention. And so that was when I kind of got my second opinion. But yeah, I mean, hearing you talk about she had her hand on the door and it's like, I'm watching this, like you're telling the story so vividly. I'm like watching it in my head in slow motion, like, wow.
Yeah. And I always say that was my divine moment.
Yeah.
All right. That was my divine moment because we could have blown it off at that point, but it didn't happen that way. The other part of that is I always say the Lord knows that I'm an idiot. Okay. So what he says is, all right, I'm going to, he didn't give you shingles, get you into the doctor's office because there's something going on I didn't even know about. It changed my whole perspective on things at that particular point. It really did. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So how have you I'm going to dive into that a little bit. How have you sort of changed the way you engage in your doctor's appointments now? Like, have you started changing? Have you been asking more questions, or like, what does a doctor's appointment look like for you now that you had that sort of awakening, that sort of blessing in disguise, and it sort of changed your perspective? How did that change how you operate in these hospital rooms now?
Now it's a matter of what, I always tell people maintenance. If they tell you, get your yearly checkups, get your yearly whatever every year, do it. And pay attention to symptoms, small things, I'm not saying obsess Don't say, oh, well, that's just shoulder pain. I lifted something, but it persists for like 2, 3, 4 weeks and it's still going on. You
Yeah.
need to see a doctor,
Yep.
right? Don't blow off these things. One of the symptoms when it comes to radon and radon gas and how it affects you, it can be radon related lung cancer. It can be one of the symptoms, shoulder pain. Well, in my day back then, I would have said, oh, I just lifted something wrong.
Yep.
So you got to pay attention. Also, number 2, do not fight your doctors. They are there to help you. They don't know everything, but that's where you come in, and you need to start telling them, this is going on with me, or that's going on with me. And when they say, well, let's look at this, or maybe it's that, don't fight them. Work with them, because they've got to investigate what's going on with your body before they can determine what the diagnosis is. So
Absolutely. And I'll jump onto that as well to say, if you feel like your doctors do not have your best interest at heart, then you got to get new doctors.
exactly.
I left a whole entire hospital system when I was first in this journey because I felt like if I stayed with them, I was going to die. It was just one of those things where I walked in there. It was right at the peak of COVID. It was 50 people in that waiting room. Nobody was 6 feet. It wasn't a big enough waiting room for there to be 50 people in there and be 6 feet apart. So the waiting room was packed with people. Now we're obviously all there because we have lung cancer or some kind of respiratory something or other, you know what I mean? And we're all in close proximity in the middle of this pandemic, and I just sat there for hours waiting to see the doctor. Finally saw the doctor for, no lie, maybe 7 minutes. And then he barely looked over my charts, looked at my results, looked at anything, and sent me on my way. And I was like, you know what? This is how you miss something critical, because the doctor is overbooked and busy and not paying attention to you. He doesn't see me. And I was like, this is the last time he's ever going to see me. And I never went back to that doctor. I was like, nope, because I didn't come this far to be taken out because someone else is not paying attention. Like, I wasn't paying attention at first. I'm not going to let somebody else not pay attention. My eyes are wide open now. So you got to make sure that the doctors that you're seeing don't get annoyed and don't get angry when you ask questions. Don't write you off. Don't, ignore you or skip engaging with you on certain things. Like, if you feel like your doctor is not paying attention, they're not, and you need to find somebody new, because if you don't have a doctor who's advocating for you and paying attention to what you have going on, then you're on your own, unfortunately. And what are you going to the doctor for if you're going to be on your own?
But you know what? One of the things too I want to raise is that find out all you can about your illness, about your type of lung cancer. And it's hard. It really was. It was hard for me. I went to Google and I put in adenocarcinoma. I couldn't even spell it. And, so I put it in, and all this stuff came up. And I was just sitting there like, oh my God, why do I have to do this when I'm the person that's going to die? That was what was going through my head. But I've learned, when they tell you things and you don't understand, research it, find out something about it so you can go back in and ask questions, just as you said. That is so important.
Absolutely. And it's, on some level too, your doctor should provide you with some of that information, but you also have to take an active role in your healthcare. You can't sit back and let everything be spoon fed to you, because that's how you get not necessarily wrong information. But remember, doctors are human too. They make mistakes. So it's better to have more eyes looking at this than others. And if you're not good at research, or, you looked at stuff like me, I Googled it too when I got my diagnosis. And of course, you look at life expectancy. Don't do that. Do not do that. I would highly recommend you don't do that. But you look up stuff and you start to go down these rabbit holes. And I mean, I have gone down all the rabbit holes from, I can't even, like, there's so many at this point. Like, I can't even start to bring them to the surface because I went to so many of them. But, find somebody in your life that you can task with not necessarily being a proxy for you, but like have them be sort of a journal for you. So you can write down like, hey, can you make sure I ask this question at this appointment? Or can you, look up what this means and help, me ask the doctor's questions. Find somebody in your life who can take an active, part in your healthcare as well. So that when you go to these appointments, if they're not there with you, they're on the phone, or they're present with you as well. Because I know when I got the first time the doctor said, hey, you have cancer, they didn't say it like that. They might as well have, the way I got treated, but he didn't say it in those words. But the first time I heard the words, you have cancer, I don't think I heard anything after that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. He could have said, you have cancer. Just kidding. I don't, like, it's all a joke. And I wouldn't have heard anything after you have cancer, because my brain went, out. It went away. You know what I mean? So had I had somebody in the room with me during that time, I might have had, I might have heard some critical information or got relayed some critical information. But I think I zoned out as soon as he said it and had like an out of body experience. I just was like, these people to this day ask me, what was it like to hear those words, or what was the thoughts in your head? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have any because I wasn't there. Like he said the words and I disappeared. So,
Yeah.
you got to have somebody who's there to walk alongside you and be there for you, even if it's just to listen when you might not be ready to hear the info.
Exactly. And that was one of the things when I was diagnosed. I went through the whole process, up to the PET scan and whatnot, by myself. I had the biopsy by myself, but I did that on purpose because I didn't want to tell my family until I knew what I was talking about. Now, I don't say everyone should do that. You need to have somebody, as you said, you do need to have somebody in there that can pinpoint questions that maybe you weren't thinking about. I guess the next time I would never, I say the next time, there will never be a next time, but I would do it differently if I had to do it again. How's that?
Yep, absolutely. So let's jump in, and I want to make sure we get some good conversation in about CR3. So let's jump into what that is and what you guys do at Citizens for Radioactive Radon Reduction. So talk us through, what you guys are, or what your sort of mission and vision is, and what are some of the things that you guys are doing in the community to sort of help combat radon?
Well, first of all, Citizens for Radioactive Radon Reduction, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to encourage homeowners, building owners, property owners, schools, you name it, to test for radon. High, fix the problem. So with that, what we do is we when I say advocate, we get involved with the community. We are the boots on the ground. All right. We literally are out there pounding the pavement, talking to people, experiencing their problems or their issues and saying, hey, maybe you should do this. Now, when it comes to the lung cancer community, one of the things that we are definitely advocating for is encouraging the healthcare field to get involved with the radon. Or to be able to radon gas, to educate maybe newly diagnosed, if there's a way, newly diagnosed patients, but everybody. For example, like I told you, I went to yesterday in Pittsburgh, they had the African American Lung Cancer Support Group, and I went there and spoke, and there were approximately 10, 12 people in there. They didn't know anything about radon, nothing. So we go and we give speeches, those types of things. Some of the things that we also do, we're involved with organizations, and one of them that I'm very proud to be a part of is Radon Health Equity Work Group. And it was started about 2 years ago. And when me and a physicist, we actually gave a presentation on radon to the entire state. And the Pennsylvania Department of Health was on there. And when we got done, David said, you all need to start a radon work group. And so we said, oh, okay, and we did. It was 4 of us. And now there's about 10, basically about 10 or 12 people on there. So we've got interns, and then we've got what we're doing is across the state of Pennsylvania, which, by the way, radon gas, which I'll explain in a minute, is in Pennsylvania is the 3rd state to have the highest levels of radon in the United States. Wow. And it has to do with many things. So we get involved with organizations. I'm also a patient research advocate with the International Association Study of Lung Cancer, ASLAC is what it's called. And let's see, what else? That basically are the things that I do. Now, I'm also involved with many other things. National Radon Action Plan. That organization, they all these organizations come together to figure out what are they going to do about radon gas for the next 5 years or the next 10 years it might be in the future. I'm also with and also we're with Pennsylvania as well as other cancer coalitions, and we work in the lung health area. Okay. Some of the programs that we have, number one is, and this came out of my journey, I started a magazine in 2017 called CR3 News Magazine. It's not a newsletter, it's a magazine. I actually researched, and out of my journey, I said, well, wait a minute. Is there anything out there that talks about radon gas specifically? It's the second leading cause of lung cancer. Is there anything that talks about this? And I did my research internationally. It's all, they put it in with the other cancers or whatever, but nothing specifically that talks about that. So I started that. And I did it on my own dime, my own Social Security at that time. And in 2017, we have about 15,000 readers international. And we are international. We're in Europe, Japan, South America, Africa. Would love more out of Africa. We'd like to get more. But we research articles, and it's got articles. It has video and audio. And so one of the things I learned over time, way back, is that video is everything. People will turn the page. When you turn a page to read an article, a video pops up and starts talking to you first. It engages people. So it's very, very dynamic, and there's nothing else like it. The other thing that we have is the Premier Youth Ambassadors for Radon Reduction. That started in 2022, I think it was. Yes. And what we did is we put together a group of youth. They actually literally came to us. And they, 5 of them at the time, had projects that they were already doing with respect to radon and working in their communities. So we decided, you know what, first of all, we need to honor those students. They were of the age of 16, 15, 18 years old. And so we did. We put it together, created this group. So what we do now is with the group, we have about 13, I think it is now, and want to grow more. But bottom line is we train them in the science of radon. Some want the science, and then some want to do community work. But through an organization, a company called CR3, we train them. They can become certified. We train them in the science, how to talk to their communities about radon gas, because if you find the levels are high, we don't want them going out there going, oh my God, you're going to die. Nah. You got to be able to, here's what it is. It's an issue, but it's solvable. It's something that you can make sure they know how to do that. Now, if they take these are certification classes in how to be a tester or a mitigator, or both. Okay. Then if they want to take the certification test, and it's a proxy 3-hour test, if they want it, then if they pass it, they will be listed within their state as a certified tester and or mitigator. And that if they want, they can use it as a job, get a job, or they can start their own businesses. Now, with that organization, the one thing I do absolutely want to go after, most of our youth we've got youth that are at Johns Hopkins University. We have youth that are at Penn State Health. We've got them that have graduated PhDs now. And then we've got young people. One day, Brian Yang, he actually did a TEDx at 17 years old. Wow. And he just published a paper along with another professor in JAMA. He's 18. So we've got them at all levels. The one thing I started to notice is that these are all high achievers, Yeah. At the youth who maybe are just looking for a job, who want to start that way, and if start engaging communities that have this need. So that's what we're going to work on for 2025, is getting out there in the communities, to the schools, and talk to them about, hey, you got any young people that might be interested in radon gas, in the science of it, and want to help their communities. So that's the other project. And then the third project we have is because of schools. We started this 7 years ago. And if you look on this side, you can see some of the calendars. These are all radon school calendars for some of the youth. And the one at the bottom that I'm pointing at right there with a little fan thing is, that's the very first one we ever did. And from there, we did 7 of them. And what they are, they're radon school calendars for little kids, for the school, them about it, tells them what they can do about it, educates them. And then we did it off of the CRCPD radon school, a poster contest that they have every year for school. Okay. And then their winners, they submit it to the state, and then top 3 for the state go to the national, and then the national, whoever they are that they pick, they win prizes and whatnot. Well, we took some of those, they draw their illustration of radon gas. We took those and put them into the calendars, and it's really fun. The whole thing is about superheroes. We now have, right there, superheroes. Okay. Superheroes fly around the world, and they save the world from radon gas, and they all have ecological names, and they all have superpowers that are certain things they do, and it just engages the walls. Then they could say, hey mom, hey dad, did you test your house? Is our house tested for radon? We also encourage them to ask their principals, is our school tested? Yep. So it's been very successful, and we intend to do it this year. It's in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French.
Nice. Now, are any of these organizations or these groups sort of, because I saw there's a Radon Rivals on the CR3 website, which also looks like it targets young folks for radon activities. Is that married into any of these too?
Yeah, it's married into the calendar. And we have a button that's on the third one. You can see this button right there. And that's the Radon Rivals button. Okay. So that button right there, we encourage the kids. We also have an online, it's a radon guide for the kids. It's free. You can go up there. There's a QR code for it. And it has different projects and fun things that they can do. And so we have buttons. And what we try to do is encourage them then, if they can get a button, and say, I'm a radon rival. I should have had that button on too. Yeah. But yeah, we have that as well for the kids. And one of the things we're going to do this year is try to engage local car dealerships, businesses to buy 30 for their local school district and for their science classroom. Yeah. And then you send them to them, and just get them involved with their schools, and that makes them a radon rival. So.
Well, there you go. So I wanted to also bring up, because before we had the conversation or went live here, you were talking about somebody who you guys were talking about going into communities and testing homes for radon. And then, when folks find out that their houses or their areas are testing high, there's steps that they have to take to mitigate those things. And there's cost that comes with it. So can you talk a little bit about, what the steps are once you have your spaces tested for radon? What are the next steps? What might some of the cost implications be? And then potentially what kind of funding can we look at or go after to help maybe mitigate the cost for low-income families?
Okay, first of all, just so you know, with part of my cancer journey, I didn't find out about radon gas until 7 months after I had a lobectomy. They removed the upper lobe of my lung, and I was home for 7 months. And then I happened to go back to a board meeting, and I was talking to a home inspector, and I told them they don't seem to know, which they didn't, where this came from. Nobody in my family really had lung cancer at that time.
Same here.
Same thing? Yep. So he said to me the magic words, did you ever hear of radon gas? And I was like, no, what is that? So he explained it to me. He says it's decayed uranium. It's in the ground. It's everywhere. But when it decays, gas, to keep it simplistic, okay? Now, if you're outside, it doesn't affect you because you've got air and all of that stuff. So you're breathing the good air in as well. But the gas seeps into the cracks in the foundation of your home through little holes that might be in there. And then when it seeps into your home, and it could be through the basement, crawl space, different areas, it accumulates over time, right? It doesn't affect you, I want to say, right away. It's one of those things, like in my case, I was in my building 32 years. Mm-hmm. And that's when, it had accumulated, but they found high levels. So it accumulates. Then after it accumulates, it can then attack your lungs, and then it can cause lung cancer. It is the second leading cause of lung cancer, and it's number one among never smokers, like myself, like many. Okay. Yeah. So that's what he told me. And then I said, okay, so how do I test for this? And he said, well, you got to have a test done, and you can use, there's two types of tests you can do on your own as a homeowner or whatever. So one is a charcoal test, and you can buy these tests at your local hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's. They have them. They're about $20, something of that sort. And then it's a charcoal test. You hang it for 4 days at the lowest level if you can, and where there's no airflow, like doors open next to the dryer or whatever. You don't do that. And then you hang it for like 4 days. There's a mailer inside of the kit that you get. You mail that in, and then they will send you the results. Either you can have it by email and or mail, of course. And then those results will tell you what your levels are. The is a continuous monitor. I have two of them in my condo. The continuous monitor monitors all day long, every day, forever. All right. Now, there's reasons that those are good, because bottom line is the charcoal test is more of a snapshot. You hang it for 4 days. But with radon, winter, it's better to test in the winter in closed door conditions.
Yep.
All your windows and doors should be closed. So if you test it in the summer and all your windows are open, it's not going to be a true snapshot, you see. So the continuous monitor does that. There's certain things that the continuous monitor will catch, like sometimes that radon level might rise at night as opposed to the daytime. Storms can affect it. They call it negative pressure, and it might rise. You may not catch that because there was no storm. Yep. You see, so different things affect the radon gas and how it rises, those kind of things. So there's two types of monitors. The continuous monitor, you can order those online. We have them on our website as well. And they're approximately, I'm going to say approximately like $100 for the lowest monitor. And then you can get one that Bluetooths to your phone and gives you the reports all the time. Okay, so it's those two types that you would use. Now, and prompt me on the questions. Make sure I'm answering your questions too.
No, you're good. Yeah.
So now you test it. If the test is above 4 picocuries per liter, the government level, EPA level says anything above 4, you really should consider getting it fixed, getting it mitigated. So there's going to be a second test. They're going to call in the mitigator, and if you do that, you'll test a second time, and then bottom line, you'll see, is that true? And then they will find the source of the gas. And after they find the source, then they will consider putting a mitigation system on your home or your building. Just so you know, my building, third floor, but I had 2 people underneath me on the ground floors test. Rose's apartment, this was 10 years ago, came up to 18 picocuries, and Stanley directly underneath me exactly came up to 9 picocuries. Again, government level is 4.
4,
right?
18.
18. The second test, they did it with the little, I told you, I always call them the Home Depot. They tested with those. They tested all the ground apartments. And Rose's apartment came up to 21 picocuries. And Stanley's came up to 13. Now, approximately 15 picocuries is the equivalent of smoking approximately a pack of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
Rose had COPD sitting in that apartment. Stanley's wife died of lung cancer, but she smoked. It's important to know that smoking does, when it comes to radon, it'll make with smoking. But bottom line, she smoked. Okay, so that's how the testing goes. The other part of that is they put 4 mitigation systems on our building. That means they found 4 sources of the gas in our building. So they put the mitigation systems on. What they do is they take a pipe, basically, and I'm using this in a basic type of way. They could drill down, or they could put a pipe underneath the building. They put a fan on it. You'll see a little round fan, and that fan runs and sucks the gas out. And then up there's a pipe that goes up the side, and it sucks it out, bringing your level down to 1. That's the goal, is to bring it down to 1. And so they did do that. You should retest with a mitigation system every 2 to 5 years. I would say 2 to 3, but 2 to 5. Okay. You should retest because the ground shifts.
Yep.
There's earthquakes. There's this. There's that. Your building shifts. You need to know in that amount of time. First of all, is that mitigation system working? You should test your home every 2 to 3 years just to make sure your levels didn't change. And that's the good part about the continuous monitor. We'll tell you that. So right now in my building, after 10 years, literally it's 9 years really, my levels are shifting. They're rising again. Why? There's many reasons for that. So I found it out because I looked at it and I said, whoa, they're going higher. And so I put 2 monitors in here. So I have another battle to fight. But
what are the levels coming up to now?
For me, it hit as high as 7 on the continuous.
Okay.
Yeah, 7. It was 7.3 or something like that. Not good.
Not
good. And me, I'm more sensitive to those levels and saying, whoa, we can't live like this forever. All right. Yeah. So someone else has to be brought in to check what the problem was. And while I walked around the building, and I found on one of the mitigation systems at the bottom, there was a big hole in the pipe underneath the fan. So, that was one reason. Then I went and saw all 4 of them. You could put your hand on that mitigation pipe on the side, and you could feel the fan running. 2 of the mitigation piping systems, you couldn't feel any fan running. Those fans were not running at that point. So you check those things on a regular basis. Just don't assume it's on there. It's on good forever.
Yeah. So is there some kind of when a company comes out and they do this mitigation, they put these systems in place, besides doing a 2 to 3 check every 2 to 3 years, is there somebody who's coming by to maintain and check on these things outside of those windows, or is that put on you as the property owner or the person who lives there to kind of do that kind of stuff?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. What happens is when you put the mitigation system on, you can buy the warranty for them to come out and check on a regular basis. And that is very, very important that they do that, And I know on your own, you can get the $20 test and hang it just to make sure things are cool. But that does not check the mitigation system. And then there is it's a U-shaped monitor that you can see if it's running properly, I forgot what they call that thing, but it's U-shaped and it's hanging on the mitigation system, and you can look at that, and if it's it'll tell you if it's running. So they do tell you about that as well. But the problem with our building is that the monitors are inside the people downstairs, their apartments. Yeah. So I can't. Only they can see it. So it would be up to them to report it if they know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I would be knocking on their doors like, hey, did you check your radon levels lately just in case?
We did that. And nobody would answer their door.
Oh, yeah. Slide something under there that says, hey, just a reminder, check your radon levels. Report it back to me if something's high. Like, I would make myself the little point of contact for that whole building. Like, oh, here comes Jamie. Let me check my radon levels. Yeah, check them. Make sure they're good. But it's interesting because hearing you talking, you just said earlier on in the conversation, you said Pennsylvania was the third highest state for radon exposure. And I lived in Philadelphia for about 10 years. And I
Mhm.
lived in an apartment. I don't want to say it was sketchy because you couldn't tell me nothing at the time. It was my first little apartment. I thought I was doing something. But I just know, like, I feel like in my soul that like that apartment probably had something to do with it because they had a basement that just was like unfinished. There was water that would kind of stand down there sometimes. Like it was one of those basements you didn't want to go into. And I just kind of kept the door closed. But
Mm.
like, I just know that based on how that apartment was, like I worked at an old college, and so I just feel like being in Philadelphia, working at that college, going to that college, and then living in that apartment, I feel like that had something to do with it because they don't know where mine came from either. But like I highly suspect between Philadelphia and then moving from Philadelphia to New York, where the
Mhm.
subway system is, working downtown at NYU and all these places in Times Square and whatnot, I just know that like environment and everything else and all that kind of stuff had to have played a factor in it. You know what I mean? Because again, I had no risk factors either. I didn't smoke. I mean, my parents smoked when I was little, but they quit. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And so it's weird that it's just weird that you said Pennsylvania has the third highest because as soon as you
Mhm.
said that, my brain was like, "That's it.
Mhm.
That's where it came from." You
That's
know.
where my
So
head went. That's where my head went. But here's the deal. Pennsylvania and most of the counties in Pennsylvania are in the red. The Philly area, there, if you look at a radon zone map, which I can't show you, but bottom
yeah,
line, the zone map, and it's an older map now, but still it's effective, I think, when you show it to people. Most of the counties are in the red. And the red zone means that they have the highest reading on gas. And then there's they're lower. And then the area around Philly is yellow, all right? And that's zone 3.
hmm
I'm in zone 1, and that's zone 3. But that does not mean that there's no radon.
yeah,
It just means, all right, you're in zone 3, but not every house. Now, that's another thing. Be very cognizant of the fact that your neighbor may test and be clean, might come out with no radon level. I mean, they're good. Not I should say no, but 1 or whatever. That does not mean you are
yeah,
home. It's different. So you don't gauge it by that. You don't gauge it by a bunch of people that tested and they came out clean. So I must be clean too. The only way to know is to test. And one of the things that with Pennsylvania, because of shale rock, that has an effect on it.
hmm
Mining,
yep,
whole Pittsburgh's on top of mines,
yep,
and other Harrisburg area, the upper level of Pennsylvania, that's all mining territory. So, those mines and those types of things are open. The other thing is gas and oil drilling. That affects the radon levels. And it also, understand too, not only can it seep through the cracks in your home, it can also come out of like a shower. It doesn't come in the water, but it's that's so you need to test. Yeah,
yeah.
and Pennsylvania is really high. The average they took, now that's an average. I think it's like 40 picocuries per liter on the homes on the data that they have right now. On the data they have right now. So
And again, the
um,
government recommendation is 4.
4. It's always 4. And
Wow.
and I want to pass this on to people. Don't panic. That's not the idea. You don't panic because you've got high levels. Um, there's something you can do about it. And this is the thing I want everybody to know. I've had people call and say, "Oh my God, should I do something? What should I do?" No, 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 no. It's not like carbon monoxide. That
Yeah.
kills you right away. No, this is something that accumulates over time. So there are fixes for it. One of the things too you can do is open your windows and just let fresh air in. Sometimes it will lower it, but I mean, there's homes. I don't know. Some of these homes have been up to like 100 picocuries. And opening your doors is going to lower it, but it's not going to lower it that to 1. You
Yeah.
see, so not you, but that can help. Sometimes it can be like with schools and stuff, and it can be an air conditioning adjustment to the
hmm
ventilation. So there's things that you can do, but the big thing is like the woman that you had asked about, is don't just sit there and do nothing. Okay. And you had asked me about the lady that I met, and it's not a radon issue, but that I know of, But I met a woman when I was going for my physical therapy, and we were in the. She's a Lyft driver. Got in, we were talking, and I said, "Oh, I'm a lung cancer advocate," and she said, "Oh, I was just diagnosed with lung cancer," and I said, "Oh, wow, what stage?" Like that, and she says, "Oh, I don't know." She said, "I didn't have the PET scan." She said, "But I don't think I'm going to do anything about it." I just went blank. You think with all your training, I'm 10 years in this business. Okay, I know what to say, right? I went blank.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, you don't. And then how do I say to her? So I thought about it and I said, first of all, you learn to listen.
Yep.
And then why? And she said, well, it's because I've got all these other illnesses. My dad just died of lung cancer, and my sister, she died, shortly after that, or something of that sort. Her sister died, and she said, I'm just not ready to deal with this. So I didn't mention radon because I didn't want to scare her. Okay. I told her, well, I deal in the radon area. I gave her my card and said, let me know if I can help, what resources. I have lots of resources. Maybe there's something I can do to help you. But I'm saying this because I don't want people that say have lung cancer and they're listening about radon and saying, I don't think I want to deal with this. There's something you can do. Now, the other part of that is that the problems that we are running into is that in the low income or even like seniors and whatnot, they don't have a lot of money. So if you're going to go and get it fixed, it might cost you, the mitigation system might cost you like $1,200. I say more like $1,500 to $2,500.
Mm-hmm.
Prices have gone up a little bit. So they don't have that kind of money to spend. And understand that mitigation systems are not covered on homeowners insurance. All right. It's not there yet. So the problem is they don't have the money to spend. What do we do about that?
Yeah.
And that's an issue. So we, under Radon Health Equity Work Group, we're working on this, is trying to get mitigators to donate time and material for free in the state of Pennsylvania, but we'd love them for everywhere. We're going to be put into a database, and one of them and if they qualify, the homeowner qualifies, they would put a mitigation system on, maybe for free or at a reduced cost.
Yeah.
Something to help them. One lady I just talked to 2 weeks ago, her levels were high, and I did explain this to her, and she said, well, I don't have any money. She's in a low income neighborhood. And she said, and I can't pay for this. So if you can't find anybody, I'll just have to sit here in the high radon. There must be something else we can do.
It has to be.
Yes. And we need to start thinking about that. So that's part of it too. We'll work on that and see what we can do to help people as well.
Yeah. Well, so real quick to jump into some of the other risk factors too. Radon is definitely, it's the second major cause of lung cancer, second to smoking, of course. But there are other risk factors too that folks need to be aware of. Obviously, so here's one thing I learned when I did an episode on smoking and lung cancer. So there is something called, you got smokers, you have secondhand smoke when you're in the room with someone who's smoking, and then there's third-hand smoke, which I didn't know about. So third-hand smoke is when it's in your curtains, it's in your couch, it's in the fabrics in your house, like it's in the things that you live on and that you sleep on and that you engage with on a regular basis in your space. There's also third-hand smoke that you have to be concerned about as well. So even if you've quit smoking, even if you are living with someone who has quit smoking, you have to really take a hard look at your furniture, your fixtures, your clothing and all that kind of stuff. And you might need to do something, significant to really get rid of all of that risk factor as a whole. Quitting smoking is a big part of it, but it may not be the whole thing. So just pay attention to that third hand smoking, because that also is something that I learned just from doing that show. And I was like, oh, like I had no idea, so that's something that I try to make sure folks are aware of as well. Another risk factor is not just exposure to radon, but exposure to air pollution, which
Yes.
is huge now. So I am a big proponent of people that live in high metropolitans like New York and, even like California, honestly, and some of these densely populated cities. There should be way, way, way more effort and attention put onto this air pollution, and lung cancer sort of screening and treatment. Like, I feel
Yes.
like if you live in any of those areas, you should be allowed to get screened at any time because you live in New York or you live in, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, all those areas where you've got this like industrial environment a little bit. You've got this smoke that's billowing into the air all the time. Your atmosphere, I mean, when I lived in New York and I lived in Philly, there used to be like, I used to look at my phone and they would be like, the air quality is bad. You should stay indoors. What? You know what I mean? Like, that's wild to me. Anywhere where they can put a notification on your phone that says, hey, you should stay inside because the air is bad. There should be no hesitation and no red tape for you to get screened in those areas because obviously the air is bad. So there's something wrong here. So we need to be able to get access to the screening. I could stand on a soapbox for an hour and talk about the problems with lung cancer screening criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to do that to you guys today. Y'all know how I get. But anyway, exposure to air pollution is another one. Asbestos is a big one too. So especially in these areas, like I worked in a lot of old buildings. So like as I go through these risk factors for lung cancer, I look and I start to see some of these boxes and I'm like, I could check that box. I could probably check that box too. And it all just kind of adds to like, was it some kind of perfect storm of me being exposed to things? Was it genetics? Like if I had one wish in this world besides not having cancer, it would be to know where this came from. So I knew where to target my anger and where to target my advocacy rather than fighting everything at the same time. So family history of lung cancer is obviously a big one too. With that one, you have a little bit of a leg up. And I say that with a little bit of jest because there's not really a leg up in lung cancer. But if you have a history of that, you can get screened a lot easier. Your red tape to get screened is much, much less because you have that history. They're going to start screening you pretty early on in your life. Mm-hmm. So make sure like Jacquelyn said early on, make sure when they tell you to get your regular screenings that you do that, especially if you're candidates for those. And personal history of lung disease, COPD. You mentioned your neighbor downstairs has COPD just sitting in the apartment, or pulmonary fibrosis. Those kinds of diseases also are risk factors to morph into lung cancer. So make sure that you're staying active with your appointments and keeping tabs on your symptoms and stuff like that. If you get new ones or they worsen, make sure that you're talking to your doctor and really bringing it up and taking an active role in your healthcare. Don't just assume that your COPD or your pulmonary fibrosis is getting worse. Go talk about it and see if there's something else leading to it getting exacerbated. So other than that, there's, indoor air pollution, which is another one I want to talk about because this is like a new and emerging one. They started talking about, people who have, I think it's wood burning stoves. I don't know who has a wood burning stove now in 2025 at this point, but there are some communities that still have those out there. Like, the rural communities and farmers and whatnot, they have those kinds of, sort of indoor cooking situations that can contribute to, inhalation and fumes that can be lung cancer risk factors. So if you have or know somebody that's got like a wood burning stove or deals with any of that kind of stuff, if you're a camper, and you're in the woods doing that kind of stuff, these are the things you have to pay attention to. The cooking fumes are a problem. Mixing household products, chemicals can be a problem. I was like, shoot, I'm a candidate for that too. I'd mop the floor with some Fabuloso and some stuff mixed together all the time. So you got to really pay attention to these things. Like anything that you're breathing into your lungs can stick to the fibers in your lungs. So you really need to be careful what you're putting in there and what environments you're putting your body in to make sure that you're not, poisoning yourself, to be honest with you, for lack of a better term. So those are some of the risk factors that, I've seen for lung cancer and that I've researched. But there are some new ones that are emerging. Like I said, the wood burning stoves, and now with these smokers that are vaping and e-cigs and whatnot, we don't know what that's going to do later on. Like we're still in the mess around and find out. We're in the mess around phase of that. And we're going to find out later on just how bad of an impact, the vapes and the hookahs and the e-cigarettes are going to have on this younger generation. I felt like we had made such headway with smoking and sort of making cigarettes impossible to use, to be honest with you. Like you got to leave the building. You can't stand near the building. You can't go here. Like they made it very hard. They were expensive. I'm like, okay, we're making really good strides. And now we've got these vapes and these e-cigarettes that are essentially almost smokeless, where you can smoke in these public buildings and people can't tell, besides the fact that it smells like strawberry watermelon or whatever the heck. But like you can smoke discreetly in these places and folks don't know. So it's like we're taking 2 steps backwards now at this point, where we're making it easier for people to do this in environments where they're not supposed to. But that is going to be, mark my words, that's going to be a risk factor. And it's going to be a big factor in, the lung cancer spectrum of statistics, earlier diagnoses, even just the screening criteria. All of that is going to play an effect on that, and it's coming soon. So it's something to be aware of, and just to kind of reduce your risk if at all possible. Just stop smoking, stop vaping, stop e-cigs. You think they're better, they're not. Statistics and studies are showing that they're actually worse. So please make sure that you take the proper steps to stop those activities. I think I could speak for both you and I, Jacquelyn, if I said I wouldn't risk or wish lung cancer on anybody. It's a really terrible disease to have to deal with. I've lost a lot of friends to this disease already, and it's really kind of very disheartening to see folks still smoking and whatnot. But anyway, before we end, we have about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure I spend some time and give you some time to shout out your contact information. Where can people get involved? How can people support you and CR3 and any of the other organizations and advocacy efforts that you're putting forward? And just where people can continue the conversation with you regarding radon.
Well, I'd say was that if you are looking for a test kit, all right, we always start out with 1-800 SOS radon. You can go there and they will help you to find test kits for your area. Also, American Lung, you can find based on your state, you can get them possibly there. And you can also call your state radon program, and find out if they are giving out test kits. So get a test kit, no matter what. CR3 also has test kits. So if you really need one, you can call and we can get what you need. Okay, that's number one. Lastly, I think the most important thing I want to point out to everyone is that as advocates, we want to see more of the medical side and the environmental side come together.
Yep.
It would change the dynamics of diagnosis if we can get more clinical trials that were based on environmental factors. All right. One of the other things, and this is off my own journey, and I want to make sure you know this, is that I came up with the thought that when you do the intake form, if you put a box on there, they ask you all these questions, like 6 pages.
Yep.
Do you know about radon? And if you said yes or you said no, go into a nurse's office and they talk about your insurance, what's going to happen to you, what your next steps are. They give you brochures. They can give you a brochure on radon and say, that says maybe you should test your home. Mm-hmm. Now, we know the doctors can't explain it. They don't have time. They're trying to fix us. But when you go to that office, they can give you some information. And can you imagine if they have that on a form, how that changes the data that they put out? Then you'd have data that this person doesn't know about it. So there's things we can do in policy. Write to your legislators.
Yes.
And tell them every home, it should be mandated. Every home, every building should be tested for radon. Write to them. Write to your mayors. Write to your legislators, Democratic and Republican, and say, I'm a lung cancer patient. I'm just a human being that has children. Tell them and get that going now, because there's things that we're trying to work on to get legislation passed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. And thank you so much today, Jacquelyn, for being with me and sharing all that. You are a radon expert and a wealth of knowledge. And I'm so grateful that we were able to reschedule this episode and bring you on to talk about this, because I learned a lot just listening to you go over things. So I definitely want to thank you for your time today. And, we're going to keep the conversation open, folks. So you can still comment on the YouTube and the Facebook if you have questions for her or I regarding radon. I'll do my best to post contact information if I can on there so that folks can get a hold of the stuff that they need to in terms of resources. But otherwise, if you want to get in contact with me, I am at @just_jams on Instagram. I'm Jamie Jam on Facebook, and I am it's Just Jams on TikTok, which is my fun personal one. I try to combine advocacy and fun at the same time. But you can follow me on any of those platforms. I am semi-active on most of them, but for the most part, I definitely want you guys to connect with HEAL. So make sure you get, in touch with @HEAL Collaborative on Facebook and Instagram. And normally I would do a quick plug for the African American Lung Cancer Patient and Caregiver Summit in Houston, Texas this year. But unfortunately, we are booked, ladies and gentlemen. There is no more space. We are over capacity. So now there's a waiting list. So if you would like to be put on that waiting list, it's a super good problem to have. If you'd like to be put on that waiting list, feel free to reach out to me, Jamie @healcollaborative.org. I am more than happy to start compiling a list of folks that, just missed the mark. But I'm super happy to report that we are over capacity, which is great. So that's a good thing to have more than about a month out from the event. So keep it locked to HEAL Collaborative for, opportunities to register. There are folks that are going to probably inevitably cancel. So we may have 1 or 2 slots open up. So just make sure that you're tuned into us and you keep it locked to get more information. But otherwise, I want to thank everybody for your time today. I hope you have a safe and happy rest of your weekend. If there's anything you need from us at HEAL Collaborative, please don't hesitate to reach out. Jackie, I'll see you next month at the summit. I'm looking forward to it. To everybody else, hopefully I'll see you there.